All right, Hangout is live. Hello, everyone. This is the OreAni Fall 2017 anime review show. I am Albert. I am hosting this time. Tank is in. And with us, we have Ace.
Hi.
Say hi.
I just did. Hello.
Nick.
Shake it.
Nick. Sean.
Hey.
And Tank.
Nyan Pasu.
Indeed. So, Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you had a great holiday season. And we are here to discuss, like I said, the Fall 2017 anime. So, will be Oseki no Kuni, otherwise known as Land of the Lustrous for some reason. Not exactly sure why. It should be Land of the Jewels, but whatever. So,
And they're a family of jewels, just to clarify.
Indeed. So I'll kick us off. This show is based on a manga series written and illustrated by mangaka Ichikawa. And she's been publishing this on a monthly basis since 2012. It's currently collected into 8 volumes. The anime does not completely cover everything. It goes to about the middle of volume 5, I believe. So it's a really intriguing world. One thing you do need to know is that this is CG anime. So before you turn your sets off because you hate CG, I think there's been quite a number of developments in the CG anime world, and it certainly is an interesting development. It tends to keep getting better and better with each year. And I think it's worth actually watching this perspective as well as an artistic perspective. So I know that several of us have watched it. I really enjoyed it. And it is set in the far future where a group of 28 jeweled beings, they are actually made out of jewels, although technically they're sexless. They do have the physical form factor of female. They're all voiced by females, but when they shatter, you can see that they are composed, actually made out of jewels. And clearly the author did a lot of research, and the jewels have certain properties, and their characters reflect those properties. So, for example, there's a character called Diamond. She is very, in terms of hardness, she is very hard, and she is very pretty, but a flaw that if you strike it at the right way, you can chip it and break it. So there are scenes where that kind of physical characteristic of the jewel is represented in the anime during, say, an action scene. And like I said, it's set in the far future. It seems like Voss is the protagonist. It is one of the weakest in terms of hardness and is one of the youngest, is trying to find her place in life. She wants to go out and be useful and join in battle, but because of her brittleness, she is not suited for that activity. And as a result, the only human being, Kongo Sensei, assigns her the task of becoming archivist, or someone that goes out and records the natural history. And therein, it's about her growth in some ways. And in other ways, there's a lot of other characters and a certain air of mystery about what's going on with the Lunarians that appear from the sky to break apart and kidnap and use the jeweled beings. So let's go. Let's see who has seen this. Comments?
Like who hasn't seen this? Tenkun, you haven't seen this?
No, he has not.
Sorry, no, I have not. I heard you guys talking about it, but it wasn't on Crunchyroll, so I never watched it.
Yeah, I guess that is a thing. It's on Amazon Prime now if you have it. But yeah, one way or another, you should watch it. It's my anime of the year.
Yeah, I may give it a shot.
So why is it your anime of the year, Sean? Stand out from everything else.
It's just better than everything else. And like even though it's CG, the animation is better than the vast majority of television anime. Like it is just way the fuck better than everything. It's like KyoAni level character animation in it. You know, it's really like poured over every moment of it. Just like has purpose and lots of detail. And it was a show that like every time it completed an arc, like every 2 or 3 episodes, I would just watch it again. I'm like, well, I could watch some other anime, but I'm actually better off just watching this again. This is the best thing on, even if I already saw it. And I do get a lot out of those rewatches.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I definitely agree.
There are a lot of dots that you can connect, you know, whether like big ones or subtle ones. There's lots of foreshadowing. Like it's really like well put together TV show. Especially considering like how far out it is. Like it's really weird, far out fantasy. I'm not even sure that the sensei is even a human. It's kind of a mystery who he is.
It's part of the mystery, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Because this... No, it's not a spoiler. So Kongo actually means something in Japanese. So the characters mean one thing, and it's also the name of what's given to Diamond, actually, for the old Japanese reading of certain jewels. So isn't he? He's the only distinctly male character, but they don't actually explicitly say that he's male. There's a lot of mysteries going on, and the anime ends at a good point, but the story is clearly ongoing. So if you are a completionist and you just want to watch, you know, an entire series or start to finish, well, you're going to have to wait till the second season. Hopefully it will be made at some point.
Even if they started working on it like
of...
yesterday, it'll probably take a long time because one aspect of this TV show is it actually took a very long time to make, and they made like the storyboards for the first episodes like 1.5 years before it actually premiered on TV. So yeah,
it's a long process, definitely. But on the other hand, for a second season, you know, the CG models have already been made, right? So
yeah, and all that like difficult design work has been done. They spent a lot of time like trying to figure out how to render the character's hair and all that kind of stuff. Like there was a lot of prototyping involved in making this thing. Apparently,
a lot of gorgeous backgrounds too, and I believe the author was involved with production, and I don't know how much, but I know she was involved and had discussions with the director and the art director. So it's a very unique looking and enjoyable show.
Yeah, I like shows that have a whole lot of detail in them, and this one definitely has that. Like it's always communicating ideas from so many different angles, you know, the visual aspect, or you know, just literally what's happening in the story or the way the characters behave. You know, the characterization is detailed. And I also like how much the characters evolve, you know, especially the main characters. That's definitely the one, the person that evolves the most. And it's kind of amazing. It's like one of those, you know, it's kind of like watching like this long shonen fighting anime arc where at the end of the whole thing, the character has aged and he's a lot wiser and he has a different voice. And you're like, man, like you think back all the way to when the show began, it's totally different. Except this show gives you that in what, 12 episodes, 13, something like that.
Yeah. It's around episode 8, right, where some significant changes start happening personality wise. So
yeah, there's
yeah.
a sort of like childhood's end moment there, and then the character is never the same.
Right. So very interesting show. Nick, any comments from you?
No, you guys pretty much summed it up really well. It was definitely a show that, as you know, I say that I like anime for its ability to depict fiction very, very well. And this was a very good example of a super fictitious world that, you know, somebody just went about to make. So, although there are other ways to learn this story through manga and other means, I'm typically an anime watcher, so this is the kind of stuff that I like the most. So,
do you have a favorite character?
No, not particularly. I think I was more vested in the mechanics around the main character, though, and how they're able to manipulate the changes that occur to them later in the series. But one of the funniest things was this one was more of like a meta reference show for me, because like there was like some shop in Japan that made it like they went out and actually collected a lot of the gems that were in this series and like brought together a precious stone collection, not modeled after the characters or anything, but just got all the characters together in the gem form, and it's like available for sale for like some absurd amount of money.
It's ridiculous amount of money
because there are a lot of rare gems in there. It's understandable, but it's like
yeah, very rare. Like, very small too compared to some of the more.
So I think that was kind of like a funny moment for me when some hobby shop in Japan went, you can buy all the gems that represent the characters like in real life and have that in your collection for some reason if you want to top dollar for it. So like stuff like that I like even better. Like when the real world picks up on it in like a tangible way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has that fun meta lore aspect of it where you can look up the jewels on Wikipedia, the minerals, and like get the meta lore that way. Like Cinnabar was worth looking up because it's like, oh, people made lacquerware with Cinnabar, but also mining it was dangerous because it contains mercury. So if you mined Cinnabar back in the day, you didn't live long. And you know that kind of explains the character a little bit.
Yeah, like it was a very fun, almost not quite educational, but more so than a lot of other anime that come out per any given year, let alone season.
A friend of mine read the manga and said that a whole lot of character arcs were cut out, but from his description, they sound kind of superfluous. Like, I'm okay with it because the pace of the show is like brisk and it's always on point. And you know, I don't really want to like I don't really want Kantai collection out of this thing, right? Like, I don't care about seeing 1 million bajillion characters.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The manga, I've read the first volume. I have the second, but haven't read it. I was kind of holding off. In the first volume, some of the ordering of like, you kind of need to hit them with backstory and kind of set up the world, right? Whereas in the anime, because of the visual storytelling, you can push that till later. So in the later scenes in the second half about how the world is set up and possibly that the Lunarians and the jewels are all related and all of that kind of stuff to that from the get-go in the manga. And I think they made the wise decision to actually adapt the manga to anime instead of being totally faithful, direct representation of manga, which I hate, right? Because it's a different media. So I think they made the right decision to space out some of the exposition and instead focusing on the character. Wanted to highlight Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go. I just wanted to say I put in the research for it, and I found the article I was talking about. So, all the Hoseki no Kuni gems for 8 million yen, or roughly 71,360 US dollars.
Sweet.
So,
Damn.
That's all.
that is all. And of course, my friend who I shared that with says, "Yeah, you need to buy 3 sets of that too. One to like stow away, one to put on display, and one to play with."
Sounds about right.
Yes. Welcome. Jessica, did you watch me?
Yes, I watched the whole thing. I loved it. When I first heard that it was going to be 3D CG, I was a little worried because those types of anime tend to look really awful, but this one looks amazing. The CG is an enhancement rather than a distraction, and it fit the world perfectly because I don't think that the gem hair would have been really difficult to animate traditionally. It's possible to do, but it would have taken a lot of work. And I also read the first volume of the manga, and it's honestly hard to follow. An entire fight can be just 2 panels, and it can be difficult to tell what exactly is going on. So in some ways, the anime is superior to its source material, which is also pretty rare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight Foss was voiced by Kurosawa Tomoyo and did a superb job trying to represent this character that at first is innocent and kind of annoying and dumb, to someone who ends up being really wise and still trying to find herself, but definitely coming into her own, right? So Kurosawa Tomoyo, for those of you who don't know, probably most famous recently doing Kumiko in
Euphonium.
Sound Euphonium. Right. She's also in Aikatsu, and she's a relative newcomer, active since like 2012. She also actually does act as an actress in television dramas. So, yeah. So she was in Black Bullet. She was in Amagi Brilliant Park as Sylphie. Those are some of her earlier works. But I thought she was terrific. Okay, if no one else has any other comments, we can move on to our next title.
Let me just say one more thing.
Sure.
It's actually like the CG brought some level down to me because that's that studio's first TV production. Because like before they used to do like action scenes and mecha shows, and they were always really good at it. The studio is called Orange, and like the thing that I always remember are the action scenes in Akito the Exiled. Like those were like it's like eye-poppingly good. But they've also done lots of other action scenes in other anime. So now this is their first like doing full TV show production. Doing the whole thing, being the lead studio or the primary contractor or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, it's really good. And part of what makes them good is that they have traditional animation staff on board. That if you look really closely, you will start to notice that like a good quarter of each episode is actually hand drawn. Sometimes it's just effects like smoke. Sometimes it's close-ups of characters' faces. Sometimes it's entire action shots, like the Lunarians getting slashed up, like those tend to be hand drawn. There are a lot of interesting things like that. And I read an interview on the production process, and they were saying they were talking about how they designed the rendering pipeline and the materials and all that so that it could blend in with traditional animation. You know, so there are times when you see like hand-drawn heads on CG bodies or hand-drawn bodies on CG heads and so on and so forth. It's really interesting. They do a really good job of hiding it. Like, if you're not looking for it, you'll just think the whole thing is CG. Because, you know, it's just so coherent and well integrated.
Right. Okay, so that's very interesting too. And there are certain limits to CG that we all know, but I think those limits keep shrinking. So I think, you know, in a year or two, when we get the second part of this story, I would love to see what it looks like, and especially for object interaction. I think that was one of the problems with this. You know, when they're picking up like the fluffy dog things, Shiro, right? It just looks weird. Like, it doesn't look like they're in the same plane. But we'll continue to improve, and that's the nice thing about following CG animation currently. So,
yeah, for a lot of those things, they tend to hand draw them. Like, if there's subtle interaction, like a character picking up a thing and there's a close up, then they tend to hand draw it. But yeah, the dogs were kind of excusable because they looked so stupid to begin with. So I don't know if that was deliberate or unintentional, but it kind of like it hid the CG-ness of it. It just went like, well, whatever, it looks stupid anyway.
I got something to say real quick. So, you know, with the whole CG thing going on, I just want to make one quick call out that on Netflix you can actually watch the new Godzilla show going on, and it's all in CG.
Oh yeah, it's the new Polygon Pictures thing.
Yeah. Very Knights of Sidonia. As my final note on this series that I forgot to bring up earlier, because I always like to bring up the ratings on our favorite go-to site, well, maybe not favorite go-to site, but most commonly linked site, it did get the 3rd highest rating for that particular season, 12th highest rating overall in that year. 15. Huh?
What website?
The one that we the sheet links to.
What is
the
anime
list? Yeah. No. Well, AniList, not my anime list.
Analyst.co.
Oh. Yeah.
Huh.
Because like they have a unique user base. I usually like to make fun of their ratings. This one did actually kind of do, like I was saying, it got the 3rd highest rating, so there was only 2 other things that the users rated higher than this. I don't know what they currently are right now, but it was only the 15th most popular amongst the users.
I'm gonna guess that it's My Hero Academia or something.
More likely.
It's very popular because like I don't have an account there, so like none of my metrics work for their site. So as far as I know, I don't rate anything ever. So. But on that particular site, it actually has another accolade of rated 172 highest of all time, like out of all anime that they have in their database. So that's kind of cool. But of the year, it was only the 68th most popular show.
Move on. Next title is Inuyashiki. Who watched this?
A little bit.
I guess. Who gave us the 5 out of 5? And I guess that's.
Take it away.
I accidentally did my ratings upside down. It's okay. Except you didn't.
This is something I watched because, like, I knew from the first episode that it was trash. But then it's so bad it's good. You know, it's like there are some shows that are just kind of conventionally bad. You know, like if you watch any of the 10-cent Howliners, you know, like Chinese anime of the season.
Hey, I like some of those.
Those are conventionally bad. You know, they're just like poorly made. Like nothing communicates well. So Inuyashiki has all those problems, and also it's like insanely stupid and deranged and totally serious about it. It's just like the most tasteless thing ever, and it's super hilarious for that reason. That by the end of the series, there's like 9/11 times 100 happening in Japan. And also there's an asteroid that's going to destroy the Earth. It's crazy. There's so when you know that, geez, where do I even start with this thing? I guess like the essential quality of this thing is this like it feels like an edgy show written by a 13-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
A 13-year-old who thinks like this is the coolest, edgiest, darkest, most profound shit ever written, and he's totally serious about it. But you know better. And in episode 2, there's just like this incredibly like grisly, like stomach churning mass murder scene, and I don't know it.
I remember that hitting the news.
Yeah,
that made Japanese news.
it was kind of gross. And
Is this all CG as well?
No, it's like a half and half. I thought it was at first, but I was mistaken.
It's a chimera. Is that it'll have CG models sometimes, and then the exact same object will be hand drawn in the very next scene. So
Yeah,
it's disjointed.
yeah, it's nonsense. There's like a dog in the first episode, and then the dog is hand drawn. Now it's CG dog. Now it's hand drawn dog. Now it's CG dog. And you're like, what the hell is going on?
The people are like that. The cars are like that. It's just nothing really comes together. And the story has less depth than a teaspoon. Gosh. It's just there's no nuance at all. It's in fact nuance is sacrificed on the altar of shock value in the hopes that the viewer won't notice or pay attention.
Right, it's all shock value, this thing.
It is.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is the 5th most popular show of fall with the 9th highest ratings. No, like those are the ratings, but
maybe if you are a certain age, you'll think it's great. If you are exactly,
yeah, that's why I always call it according to the user base of.
Yeah,
it just shows violence and it pretends to be deep and profound when it really has nothing to say except look how deep we are, or look how violent this is. Your mom would hate this anime is the feeling that I get from it. And what really put me off was the circle jerk when 2 of the characters discussed about how awesome, but at the same time misunderstood the Gantz manga was. And how you should really give it a chance. Because the author of Gantz is also the author of Inuyashiki.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there are Gantz posters in the one kid's room. It's just, I don't mind Easter eggs, but that was a little much.
Well, it's kind of funny because I think the second most promoted anime in it was what, One Piece? That was like a topic of choice of one of the 2 protagonists, well, kind of protagonists.
So the general, yeah.
I was going to say, so you guys happy that it's only 10 episodes long, right? It was a short season.
I gave up around episode 4.
I did watch it all. More so, like, not because, like, I, wanted to consider it a train wreck or anything. It was, as I said for Hoseki no Kuni, I just kind of like it when authors push the envelope of fiction. And, this kind of fiction was crazy. As I said in our opening video, aliens crash on the planet. They decide we have to save these people. Let's give them our robot bodies. But that's too advanced for the technology. I don't care. Do it. And then let's GTFO. And they're gone. So, like, it's kind of funny because that's almost like a trope mechanic to anime. And it was just funny the way it was handled. And kind of like the result of it is, like, this whole series was made on, as Sean was kind of like saying, shock value. Like, I did watch Gantz, and read. Gantz is one of the few mangas that I've read, and it wasn't necessarily because of its content, but because, like, you never really had a clear idea of how crazy the story was going to get. You're kind of always, to me, like, wondering, like, what are they going to do next? What are they capable of? Just kind of stuff like that. And that was more my hook into the series, why I watched typically Inuyashiki as soon as it would come out before getting to other stuff, is I just that natural curiosity of what's going to happen, and boy, did it deliver. It definitely succeeded in its shock, as we talked about in the episode 2, and then the the annihilation of 2chan was kind of a thing too, that kind of had a few people talking about like, oh geez, look at that.
Oh god, yeah, there was that episode.
So like it succeeded in, I think, just not like in its practicality, but it's kind of true to Gantz in that sense, where it's just the zany level of. I remember Gantz being very, very, gory and brutal, and that's what embodied that series, and that's not necessarily what Inuyashiki's trying to be. While it does have that moment here and there, it's this interesting, almost like movie-esque story of how two people deal with inheriting these like super advanced robot bodies, and yeah, it's not there for practicality. It's just a story, like a big massive what if.
But the question and the answer is like so stupid.
Yeah,
because the question is, what if you were given the power to destroy Earth or cure cancer? What would you do? Would you destroy the Earth or cure cancer? And then it's given to two characters. One wants to destroy the Earth, the other just wants to cure cancer. So they have some cataclysmic showdown at the end, and then it tries to like feign it tries to have this moment where it's like the show is just so cynical. That's the thing that really bugs me about this show, that like in its soul it is just absolutely cynical about human society.
Mm-hmm.
And like everyone in the show is just complete trash, and the show just has it just like obliterates everyone with no care in the world. It just like shows you this incredible carnage, and my jaw is just dropped through all of its like mass carnage scenes.
Especially the police one.
Yeah. God. So this show is kind of like sick and deranged in that sense. And then at the end of the show, it tries to like impart the innate goodness of humanity. And I'm like, how dare you try to impart this lesson to me? Like you don't believe in any of what you're saying.
And it's such a shame because the opening song completely lied. It looked really interesting. It had pretty cool imagery of the skyscrapers erupting out of someone's back, and there was more depth in the opening than in the entire show that I watched. And I feel that it was misleading because I expected something better.
But all that said, I kind of recommend it. It is so bad that it must be seen to be believed, and it just gets worse and worse.
I'm glad I stopped when I did then. Oy.
So at near the end, the antagonist gets the power to like control planes remotely. Mm-hmm. So then there's a certain episode that's just like 9/11 times 10 happening. Jeez. And then the other guy is like fighting to save all the planes before they crash into the it's so dumb, and it just escalates from there. It just keeps escalating.
How can it escalate from a million 9/11s? My gosh.
Well, how about this? There's an asteroid that's going to hit Earth, just out of the blue. Like, oh, by the way, the Earth is going to be obliterated tomorrow.
And the really cool thing about that is we actually had a message from anime President Trump about that.
Yeah.
I heard about that.
So is that Trump's first appearance in anime?
I have no clue.
Not in manga. He's been in a lot of manga recently, but maybe first anime.
It might be an anime first, though. It might be. I mean, I can't say for sure, but it's up there.
So is this another title that's on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, I don't know if it's still there. Yeah, actually, yeah. Is this a Noitamina show? Noitamina.
I don't think so.
Like, yes, they would air something as tasteless as Inuyashiki. This is a Noitamina show, and that means it's an Amazon show, and it's probably still on Amazon because they have a special deal with Noitamina.
Mm.
So yeah, Amazon last season had the best anime of the season and the worst anime of the season. So they were really killing it.
That's what killed Amazon Strike, or Anime Strike.
But it's kind of better that it died, because now it's just like what it should have been from the get-go, in my opinion.
All right. Any other comments about Inuyashiki?
As a side note, Amazon still is doing simulcasts. Like I only discovered this a few days ago, but they have.
Oh, really?
They've got Koku, and they have something called After the Rain, and then they have a third thing.
All they did was kill Strike, and they just rolled it down to, as long as you have Prime membership, you basically have Strike. You just don't have to pay for it anymore.
Yeah, and I figured that like Amazon's licensing days outside of the Noitemina stuff would be over, but no, they're still simulcasting stuff. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah.
I'm a little bummed that Anime Strike went away just because I got free manga every month.
Oh yeah.
That is true. Okay, well, shall we move on to our next show? Is Wake Up Girls Shinsho.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. This one's my fault. I inversely rated my shows, so I don't know what I was thinking, but this one should have been at the bottom. But it's fine. I can, gunshot through this one. So the biggest reason why I wanted to bring up Wake Up Girls Shinsho was just, to kind of just bring up that this is the series that started with a televised movie that launched into a TV series that I think had another movie or two come out. I have it. I just haven't watched it yet to really know how it ties into the rest of this yet. But then now we have another season, and there's like no end in sight yet. So I know this one's like Studio Greenleaves, and I don't know if this is this their only project, or I have no clue. But what I really wanted to bring up most about this show in this particular series was they actually did something kind of interesting towards the end specifically, but throughout the show, it's much more the same. The group's still practicing. They're becoming better. They're still an idol group. They have their challenges that are presented for them. That the company's not the top tier talent, so they're kind of like at times struggling just to kind of get by. And this is actually, if you recall, this is that kind of like soulless idol show where you have that I-1 corporation whose like slogan is "Don't think, don't do whatever, just act," or whatever.
Yeah, they're the AKB48 stand-in.
Yeah, absolutely. And but what actually, in my opinion, was interesting here towards the end, you actually noticed an app kind of gaining popularity. They made a virtual idol called a V-doll, which wasn't really present throughout most of the series. It was kind of there. But so I guess this might be a potential spoiler, but this thing's like marketed like the current it's more of like an interactive app that you use on your smartphone, but it has like the popularity of the Vocaloid fandom. And they just started having Legasp virtual concerts. And this was introduced towards the end of the show. So we didn't really get to see, we saw like the market kind of struggling in the middle, but I don't know if that was truly the cause of the struggle or just the times or what they were trying to paint the culprit as there. But some key things happen in this show if you kind of want to keep watching or waiting for more. And I'm just going to go ahead and spoil a few of them now because it pertains to something I'm going to talk about next season. I've already decided this. And I was talking with another person, Jessica, actually, about, because I think she was the only other one who was... did you actually get much further with this before I proceed, Jessica? Or
No, I watched the first 5 episodes, I think.
Okay.
And I put it on the back burner and got distracted by other shiny things, so...
Okay, so I won't really reveal all the spoileriest of the spoilers, but I will say some key moments that happen are... Oh, and before I dive into that, I was just mentioning that one of the troubles I had watching this show is we have a group of 7 people. The Wake Up Girls is a cast of 7, and they kind of have nicknames for each other, and they also talk a lot about the other idols as though they were friends. So for me, it was kind of hard to keep track of a lot of these names, and a lot of times they'd like just say a name, and I wouldn't even commit it to memory. I wouldn't even try to pull up who it was. I'd just be like, oh, whatever. I'm just watching for like the premise here. So yeah, that you might have difficulty with that. You might not sure if you're more vested in the characters. But at one point, there were tag-along characters introduced, I think in the prior content. Do you remember like a cast of 3 middle school girls who were like really into Wake Up Girls?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they actually like pestered the agency so much that the idol group itself kind of convinced them to like kind of work part-time for the agency, or like more like kind of had the agency accept their part-time help. Well, that eventually turned them in to their own group. And I do want to say the name, unfortunately, but the group that they ended up introducing was called Run Girls Run. And that is the 3 tag-along members that were in the first comic. So like they are their like middle school-esque primordial ooze idol group at this moment. That's like technically the second one to this company at this time. And, you know, I didn't really think much of it. I was like, oh, that was kind of a nice thing, that I guess. And then I watched an episode from this airing season, and the song was sung by Run Girls Run. I like lost my shit. Like, wait, didn't they like just become a group in an anime? And like they already have their first song next season in another anime, like unrelated. I just couldn't contain that. I'll say the anime in particular when we do like the early discussion next video, but I just laughed at like this group that I saw come together in an anime is like totally singing the song of another one.
So who exactly would you like recommend this show to, Nick?
I'd say like it's kind of weird because I don't think it really. I think a lot of idol shows kind of have you, I guess, stand behind a character and have you support that character by their goods, whereas Wake Up Girls is more of a little bit of a deconstruction of that, because you have like so many idol-esque industries depicted in this show, and it is kind of showing like the startup struggle of a show as they are presented options that they have like to take their direction with it. I don't really know idol shows that well enough to know if it would actually be interesting to a group of like a certain demographic. I'm just not that versed enough to say.
I'll say that I've seen the original Wake Up Girls, and it was kind of okay.
Yeah.
And I say this as someone who's completely disinterested in idols. That it had a little bit more of an industry focus than I was expecting, but I don't know about this one. Like, is this a continuation of the old stuff? Do you have to be on the Wake Up Girls train to really like watch this one?
Like I said, I had trouble with some nicknames, so I just ignored that. And if I didn't get the identity of who they were talking about, I didn't much care. I just kind of watched it more for the direction it was going, more so than an affinity for the cast. So I think you'd be fine there. But one thing that I kind of noticed in particular is, you know, at times it gets lost in moments of drama, and drama is not its main like focus, but you know, it has to have that episode here and there to show you something. But I kind of remember, I think in the later episodes, like somewhere near the end, maybe around like 7 or 9 or something, I was kind of feeling like the animation was kind of lacking. Like there was some rush jobs involved there, but I didn't really capture it well. Like I just kind of was. I was falling behind in my last season, so I just kind of had to watch stuff instead of like take a moment to evaluate and chronologically like map what my thoughts were of the series at the time. But I kind of wish I did, but I was falling behind. So
for me, the appeal of Wake Up Girls has always been the more realistic lens it looks at the idol industry through, because I don't really care for idol shows either. And in the second season, one of the girls develops an eating disorder. And I really don't remember seeing that in any anime ever, so I have to give props to this show for trying to tackle something like that. And sure, it kind of glosses over it and doesn't focus on it perhaps as much as it should, but the fact that it even brings up that this is a thing that some people can go through when in an industry that relies on you looking a certain way is really, really cool.
Yeah, like it's not like a lot of my understanding of like the current Japanese idol culture. So like that's one thing going for it, but then when you're an idol show who doesn't necessarily try to appeal to that idol-esque fan base, like what is your fan base? I think that's the trouble I had expressing earlier.
All right.
One piece of I haven't seen this show, but something I just discovered by looking it up now is that the director is apparently Shin Itagaki, which I think is the guy who did Take You and Berserk. But basically, I always thought of Wake Up Girls as Yutaka Yamamoto's thing, like that. He was the original director and creator of that, and he's like an ex-KyoAni guy, you know, who then left the studio and then like went on to make some stuff. He's the guy who coined the phrase "save anime" because at one point he said like, "My new show is gonna save anime," and that became a meme ever since. But recently he's been known to be like a bitter guy. He's been known to like sexually harass the staff. So it seems like he's just kind of he's kind of got a toxic reputation. So it's kind of interesting to me that they're continuing Wake Up Girls without him, because I thought the only reason it existed was because of him.
Yeah,
so,
like
yeah, I wish I knew more about that.
I can't say I see an end in sight because unfortunately I haven't got to that other movie that I don't remember a movie 2. Maybe it exists out there, but I just haven't watched the third one. And you know, not watching it before I dove into the season didn't really affect me terribly much. So I don't think it's a must to watch it yet. But once I watch it, I'll know a little bit better. Because like these aren't theatrical movies. I don't think. I think they're like straight to televised.
Okay. So then we will move on to our next title. Just a second here. All right. Just a second. There we go. So the next title is Osake wa fufu ni natte kara, or the English title is Love is Like a Cocktail. This is a short anime. Just give me a second while I switch to screen share. Okay, so I picked this to talk about because, because of a couple of things. So it's a short anime. It's 4 minutes long, I think, and it's about this woman, Chisato. I'm not even sure what exactly she does. And her husband, who is like a bartender, she's super competent and cool at work. But when she comes home and has a cocktail, she becomes like all super lovey-dovey. So I guess this is one of the dere types, which is yoi dere, meaning, you know, a drunk dere. Right? And you know, I was hoping this would be something like a short anime from a couple years ago. I can't understand what my husband is saying, right? Because it's basically two characters interacting, and I thought this might be one of those. And unfortunately, it is absolutely not any of it. It is based on a manga that you see on the screen, and it was adapted into the anime, and I had some hopes for it. But even just after watching the first episode, I realized no, pretty much. She comes home from some sort of thing, and she has a drink and becomes lovey-dovey. End of story. And then there she is, and her, totally lets her hair down and becomes like almost childlike and very, I guess, pampered in some ways. And at the very end, there's a recipe for a cocktail. The end. So in the end, I can't recommend this at all. And if you thought, oh, it's short, I'll just go. Zero character development. Interestingly enough, the most character development happens in like the last 2 episodes, which is a flashback to how the two met. I don't get it.
Yeah.
So thumbs down.
To me, it's like not a series you want to watch all in one setting, because it kind of would be a little bit odd. But I think it's like main appeal. I don't know what time slot it ran, but it was like probably one of those things where instead of a commercial you have this like short anime that perhaps if you're an anime fan had it on in your Japanese home, because this is airing in Japanese television somewhere. It would just kind of like introduce an idea, is what it seemed to me. Like, I can't say that I mix alcohol at all often myself, and I don't know how the typical couple in Japan or even the US really does things. But, if you had a TV show that came on that just, had a light little, just a tiny little story behind it, not even like an in-depth one, just a bland story. And you just said, like, here's this cocktail you could make, probably with stuff you have in your home. I think, it's just kind of like almost providing you a suggestion of what you can do. It's kind of the angle I thought of. I know you could just look that stuff up on the internet if you were really interested in it. And if it was your hobby anyway, you'd probably know a lot more advanced stuff than like what would be on this show. But instead of a commercial you'd be having, it just seems like an interesting effort at promoting something like cocktails.
Food shows are pretty trendy all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like several every season. I think there's one about ramen this season.
But like this one, I think it just paints it in such an easy light, because it's like, you just like when it does the how to make it thing, you just get this like little lemon dropping down with an unrelated quote. He'll just say something as he pulls down the blind for the whole presentation to start. And it's just like, you have a glass and you put these 2 things in it, and you're done. You have this alcohol. We have non-alcoholic ones at times. It's just a mix of juice, still a cocktail. Just put that in there.
So you're saying that even its educational component seems a little dubious?
No. It's like I said, more because I don't think kids would be watching this. So like not as an education thing, but just as a what you could be doing. Like there is this drink in existence. You could do it right now in your home if you wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, there's always anime that's going to be like trying to teach you stuff, even like a sports anime. Shown in sports anime is always trying to teach you like, these are the rules of the game. This is the appeal of the game. This is why you should get into this game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of these cooking or food shows in general. And even when I go on Netflix and just see like what J-dramas they happen to have, like 2 out of 3 are some sort of food thing. I don't know.
It's a distinctly Japanese thing too, because if you look at like variety shows or morning talk shows, there's just so much about, we go to this little part of the country and they have this specialty and we'll explore it. It's all about like food. There's a lot of food shows from the get-go. So it doesn't surprise me that but I just didn't want a recipe at the end. Just want some more character development.
Yeah, like this isn't like a show for that type of substance. It's just a show for promoting, like I said, something quick and easy that you can do at home. Is more kind of what. Holy cow!
So
wait,
wasn't there an anime called Bartender that had more of a story?
Dude,
thing?
Albert,
what?
We stumbled upon it. This was the most popular of fall with the 2nd highest rating. 5th most popular of the 2017 season with the 5th highest rating of 2017.
Yeah, quit looking at AniList.
34 highest rated of all time. 49th most popular of all time. Holy cow.
No, just cut it out. Yeah, just cut it out.
Just stop.
I found the number one.
We're gonna move on. So next up is Mahotsukai no Yome. English title is Ancient Magus Bride. It's not Magnus, it's Magus. Okay, that's how I pronounce it, and that's how I was told it's pronounced. So please, people, there's so many podcasts that are just mispronouncing things left and right, and annoys the hell out of me. So anyway, yeah, Ancient Magus Bride. Let me. Jessica, you are a big fan of this IP.
I am indeed. I have read all of the manga that's available in the US, and I tune in every week for this one. I really, really like it. Oh, what?
I made a mistake just a moment ago when I said the ratings. I don't know the site that well. That was apparently amongst TV shorts they separated out from normal shows because it was the most popular. But
It's still tragedy.
This show is the most popular and the highest rated. Just saying, off that chart's demographics. I was like, how could there be two first? One's a short, one's not a short. Got it.
Thanks. All right, back to Jessica.
It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely, and it makes the magic feel real and alive. I also did a little bit of digging around to find out what a sleigh beggy is, because that name sounds so stupid. And it turns out it is an actual real thing. There are fairies that live, supposedly, on the Isle of Man, and they usually are associated with fire and are considered to be trickstery types. You don't really want them around. So this show takes a little bit of a different interpretation of that type of creature, at least so far. But everything else seems to be pretty spot on as far as the mythology goes. It's lovely. It really is. The only criticism that I have of it is there's a scene where an ancient wizard sings a song to summon elves, and the song is kind of poppy. And it just sort of breaks the immersion a bit, because you'd think it would be a more haunting, ethereal type of a song instead of this modern thing. It just didn't click with me. It's not a bad song, it just doesn't match the tone of the scene. So has anyone else seen that episode and know what I'm talking about?
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about, and
what do
I
you
would
think
agree.
about that?
Yeah, I thought that the song was not quite, it didn't quite fit the scene or the background of the song itself. So I would agree. You know, the thing that I appreciated about this is this anime adaptation is done by Wit Studio, and Wit Studio, as we all know, has some serious issues with the middle of the show. They are the studio that did Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress. Like in the middle of the show, the Sakuga, the animation goes to hell. They did Attack on Titan. In the middle of the show, the animation goes to hell. They did Seraph of the End. In the middle of the show, the animation goes to hell. So I'm like, oh no, not Wit Studio.
What about that Rolling Girl show?
Yes, in the middle of the show, the animation goes to hell. So
you didn't even have to get to the middle. You just need to go to episode 3.
Yeah.
So the point is, they managed to pull it off. Like I was watching for, the animation fails, and they managed to keep up a pretty good quality animation all the way throughout, at least the first core of 12 episodes. Now it is continuing, and the second core is going on, so we'll see what happens. But I believe it's not just purely Wit. They actually have help from a couple of other places too. So, wait, I think that's right, or maybe I'm thinking of the OVA. Yeah. So, I know the author does and did a lot of work digging up the mythology of the British Isles. And so many of these creatures of the realms of fairy and other places pretty accurate, at least from a historical, mythological perspective. And there's a she, right? She might have tweaked things a bit for it to fit her story, but I do know that a lot of research was done, and much of it is accurate. So it's wholeheartedly recommended, just like you, Jessica, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to the second core that is currently ongoing.
The actress who plays Chisei really nails the character too, that she's a broken individual who's very sad but is just trying to get through day by day. Her performance is extraordinary.
Yeah, and a lot of the backstory is starting to come out, and even in the manga, let me think about this. It's see how they resolve some of the questions about her background, but I get a full explanation. I mean, the next 12 episodes, I can kind of see where it's going to end, but it's not going to get into what's currently ongoing in the manga. So, but yeah, exactly. She, the voice actress is Atsumi Tanizaki. She's relatively a newcomer. She started working in 2012. But got a couple of credits to her name. Yeah, interesting. Nothing super high profile. Probably her most prominent part, because she's been in other parts. She was in like Hoseki no Kuni. She's in Blend S from last season. She was one of the side characters in Euphonium and High School Fleet. So she's been working. This is definitely stretching her acting abilities, and I think she's doing a superb job. Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
So I think I stopped watching it after episode 3. So let me just bounce my impression off you guys. Like I also saw the OVA that came before that. So I saw all that stuff. Then I watched 3 episodes of the show, and I kind of went in expecting the greatest thing ever made, because that's what, like, the hype surrounding this thing was just crazy. So I was expecting something like mind-boggling, mind-blowing, and then it's pretty well made, and I kept waiting for it to pop off, but it never does. Is this just Natsume Yujinsho with Shintoism replaced with British folklore? Because that's kind of what it seems like to me.
No, I think there's a little more under the hood than that. Because it's about an individual with absolutely zero self-worth trying to find that and finding her place in the world. And so it's not a fairy of the week type thing. It's Chisei's continuing journey to evolve as a person and find happiness.
Yeah, I've only watched like the first season of Natsume Yujinsho. Yeah, totally different vibe. And it's not so focused on this character, this yokai has a problem that we need to solve.
Okay, because that's what the show felt like to me where I left off, because it was like where there was some ghost in the lake or something, and then there's a tragic backstory involving the ghost in the lake, and then that was a cliffhanger. I'm like, okay, the rest of this writes itself. Like, does it go places after that, or does it keep introducing, like, they go to a new place and they meet new characters, and here's a backstory, and here's some, like, you're a wizard Harry type, foreshadowing? Like it seemed kind of repetitive from what I've seen. Like, does it grow out of that?
Yes, because it's about Chisei's journey.
Yes.
The focus is always on her, rather than the magic that she's around.
Okay.
Okay. I think we were the only two that watched it, so it's a high recommendation from both of us, and it is a lot more drama. There's a little bit of fantasy, obviously, with all the magic in it, but there are a little bit of adult themes, but nothing. It's not like Inuyashiki or anything like that. So definitely check it out.
Perhaps we should mention the music. I'm not a musical person by any means, but there are quite a few instruments that are used in the score that I don't recognize. So perhaps a person that is more knowledgeable about that would be able to shed some light on the music used.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not me. I do know that the soundtrack has been released, and I think it was pretty amount of music for different scenes. It does not feel, how some shows they just keep reusing the music, and it seems like they only have like 3 themes that they want to touch upon because. But here, it seems like have different music, and it's very atmospherical, and this sets the mood definitely. So it's possible that did the music composition actually try to bring in some unusual or more traditional instruments. Okay, let's move on. We've been on the air for an hour. So the next title is Kekkai Sensen and Beyond, otherwise known as Blood Battlefront
Blockade, Battlefront, and Beyond.
BBB and Beyond. 4 Bs now.
Bed Bath and Beyond.
Is the next one going to be To Be Infinity?
No, it's going to be Beyond with 2 exclamation points.
No, that's not one of those series.
It's Beyond Japan, right? Because it's in New York.
It is in Europe. And what do they call it? It's in Hell Same's Lot. More specifically.
Yes. So how does this compare? This is the 2nd season of the show. We all had problems with the 1st season, I know, but how did it end up? Nick, you had.
Honestly, I liked it better than the 1st. Huh?
Agreed.
Oh wait, someone else watched it. I didn't look.
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay, cool. Thought I might have been alone on this. I didn't pay too much particular attention. Wait, you're not on the list. Okay.
I'm not. I filled it out.
No, on the second side, the side with the weighted values, like ordered.
I
was looking at the weight, the ordered side. Anyway, so one thing that I wanted to really express here is Keikai Sensen has like an overall story, but it's still highly episodic. You got this progressive story that you were kind of watching like what I call, or like what anyone would probably consider like a terrorist attack of the week, right? Like that was what season 1 was mostly about. At least my impression of it at this point, from what I do remember. Keikai Sensen and Beyond is kind of interesting because while it kicks up, episode 1 is in a very similar fashion to how the entire season 1 really played out. The core of this series mostly does something kind of else. We actually follow like characters having a personal crisis more so than a citywide crisis that they have to kind of address. So I think actually episode 2 and 3 followed a little bit with a little bit more of the story of Hellsame Slot, introducing a few more characters, because we always need more characters introduced in Keikai Sensen. But episodes, I think, like 4, 5, and 6 followed personal crises of the cast of characters that usually don't get prime time focus. So this season actually felt more like a collection of OVAs, actually. Like, I don't know the source content to Keikai Sensen. I don't know if this is original, if it happened in the manga, if it happened in this exact order in the manga and it's following it closely. I couldn't tell you, but all I know is I definitely liked when it was following almost like the backstory of certain characters, or more just additional story instead of backstory. And yeah, it was much more attractive than I remember season 1 being. I don't know. What did you think of it, Jessica?
Well,
with 5 simple steps, relieve your eye.
Whoops.
One of the problems I had with the first season is I didn't feel that I knew any of the characters. Is that we're just kind of thrown into the situation. Everybody does their own thing, and there's just no development or anything. But in season 2, we get that.
Yeah.
And so, in my opinion, that makes season 2 much better. That we know why these characters are the way they are and why they do what they do, and that's pretty important. We don't get any closer to finishing up the overall story with the eyes of God and whatnot. It just goes right back to the very start, so that's a little frustrating. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'd say it's amazing or anything.
Right. Yeah, like whenever...
I really like the alien character designs. They're all very different and weird and kind of mind-bendy. That Cthulhu-esque type horror that they have going on. So it's got good art, if nothing else.
Yeah, because like one thing that I really wanted to kind of like send home with this series is in season 2, you would think that, I forget what the guy's name, but you always had that one, I think he's like what, a blood breed, a vampire who's usually instigating those city attacks. Like he's like, hey, I have a new thing for you guys to deal with now. And he's all, get this thing solved before the end of the episode. And he has that one subordinate that's like a chick. I don't know. I only think I saw him once or twice in Keikai Sensen season 2 and beyond. And the one brother character of the ghost girl, he like literally appeared right at the end too. So it's like largely a lot of that overall story of season 1, or most of the antagonists for that matter were really put on the back burner, and you don't really hear from them for the most part. And the story arcs that they came up with sometimes were pretty out there, because I remember in like the one Butler episode, I was really impressed with the animation at the end there. And I really liked one of the arcs. This series is actually kind of like half OVA episode and half arc. There's only like 3 arcs in it, which would make like 6 episodes, and then you'd have 6 episodes of non-arc stuff. That one of the arcs I really did enjoy, when he has the one friend who's kind of like wimpy. He was introduced in season 1. I think I just forget his name. They kind of introduced these like microbiological threats, which it was just kind of like the zaniness that I really liked. Like someone was being really creative with the type of like crisis attacks that could be happening to the city. I just felt like the story was a little bit better in some of them, more so than like some of the terroristic attacks the one guy always seemingly caused. It just had a little bit more depth to it, instead of just like deal with this crisis, like there's this fundamental problem that we have to address.
Yeah, for my part, I did not watch this season. I was pretty disappointed with the first season. From what I've read on the internet, this season is much more closer to what the the original manga is like, more faithful in some ways. I just don't find any of the characters that interesting enough to continue watching this series. And the interesting part for me for picking up season 1 was the director, and the director changed for this one. The story itself and the characters themselves aren't interesting enough for me to continue. So, but I do know that from what was being reviewed on Japanese sites, that it was popular enough, and it was said that it was closer to the original story. But with still shout outs to the first season. So I guess original characters they introduced in season 1 in various episodes. So they're not completely ignoring what happened in season 1.
No.
Okay. Any other comments? You two were the only ones, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think
All
that
right.
Union Square Garden did the music for it again. At least one of the 2 songs, if not both, and they did a nice enough
I
job
think they
with
did
that.
the OP this time, right? Instead of the ED.
But I still think too many people are sold on the last one's ED. Like, it was just too great with the thematic dancing and just the beat of the song that they chose at the time. But like, if you, I'd honestly say give it a chance if you did check out season 1. Perhaps skip episode 1 entirely, maybe 2 and 3 if you want like backstory. Well, 2 and 3 are very backstory. Episode 1 wasn't at all. It was just like another terrorist attack. But as you said, you're not invested in the characters, but they were really brought out a lot more in this second season. Like I think Chain was never explained at all in the first season, when you get this explanation of what she can actually do in the second season, and you just get a lot more invested in the characters if you watch more of the middle of this series. Well, probably middle to end, actually.
All right, we'll move on to the next title, which is, for some inexplicable reason, the Japanese title is and the English title is the actual English title that Crunchyroll was using was Recovery of a MMO Junkie, which makes no sense because it's the exact opposite. She's not recovering, she's actually falling into. And so promotional stuff, which I shall share with a screen share.
Yeah, that mistranslated translation it actually put false expectations of the show.
Yeah,
in
it's
my head.
super misleading. So the actual translation that Japanese sites used is recommendation of the wonderful virtual life, because the story, I probably don't need to really go into it, but the story follows this woman, and she has decided, screw life, I'm just quitting my job and becoming, this is the one thing I'm not quite sure what's going on in Japan, but she calls herself a NEET, and everyone else calls herself a NEET. But technically, NEET actually is an acronym for no education, employment. It means someone who's completely unskilled at doing anything and therefore has no prospect. And in this case, she's more of like a hikikomori, right? I mean, she clearly had employment. She worked, right? She probably had education, so she clearly was able to work this job for many years. So it doesn't really fit, but it seems like the word NEET is becoming synonymous with hikikomori in Japan.
I think the actual definition of NEET is not in education, employment, or training. So it's not that you've never had it; it's that you are currently not engaging in education or training, or you're not in the workforce.
Oh, is that
so I
right?
guess like at any time you can just become a NEET by just like giving up on your career.
Wow. All right. Well, I was in NEET for a couple months, a couple years ago, because I quit my job at that time. All right. Good to know. Well, so yeah, Moriko decides she's quitting her job, and there's a backstory there, but we don't really get a whole lot of it why she quit. It seems like she was working for one of those black companies. She spends her time completely immersed in playing an MMO. And then through things that happen in the MMO, she discovers, of course, this is anime, that, hey, the convenience store that she goes to, her guildmaster is one of the clerks there, right? And all these things keep happening. So the thing that I personally enjoy about this is, the protagonist is, in her 30s, right? And I'm there are so many school anime that this was so refreshing to me. This being anime, the relationships that develop are hilariously not age appropriate. Even in Japan, like the comments that are being thrown at them is like, what are they in middle school? Because of the way, which is super indecisive, super paranoid, super I don't want to say immature, but yeah, they're not acting like adults.
They're inexperienced. I think that's a better word than immature. They're just inexperienced.
True. But it was quite hilarious in many ways, especially here, I'll run you through. Moriko goes through super deformed chibi mode when she's completely into the game. I think this is like first episode.
Yeah, there are a lot of good
oh yeah, it's great.
Mori-chan.
Mori-chan, and then this is when her stomach growled at the convenience store, I think. There she is eating her fried chicken. It's just, the caption reads about Misoji, meaning 30s. Like she's, in Japan, in cultures, man, if you're in your 30s, you can just forget about it. You're done. You're done for as a woman. So she's like, 30s, I'm in my 30s. And then there's this recurring theme where she uses her sticky roller to pick up, this is a thing in Japan, but it's like a pet roller to pick up, pet hair, but she's using it to clean her room or the rugs, because many places vacuum clean like you would, because it's a small apartment. You don't need it. So she goes into panic mode and starts cleaning, So yeah, it's just, it was funny, and I enjoyed it every week. Good music. And yes, the relationship progress as far as we all wanted to, because, well, it's anime, So there's that, unfortunately. But overall, I would highly recommend it to most people. It's pretty safe for most people of all ages. And if you have ever had friends that have gotten into MMOs, or if you yourself, play a lot of it, you can relate to these people. Although the MMO is far cooler, I think, than anything in real life.
I think part of what makes the MMO stuff relatable for someone who's actually played MMOs or plays video games in general is that it doesn't try to over glamorize the game. Like, it glamorizes it a little bit, right? But not too much. It's not an isekai in a different form kind of anime where you put on the VR headset and you're taken into the fantasy world. This show always shows like reaction shots of her in front of the keyboard, and it never makes you forget that she's actually just playing a game.
Yeah, the characters will go A off A, and so they'll be frozen mid pose. And there was one time where they lost a raid because she was distracted, and forgot to DPS. So it never lets you forget that it's a game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one that my husband saw me watching it, and he sat down on the couch to watch it with me, and he really enjoyed it. So it definitely has some cross genre appeal for people that aren't necessarily into anime but are into video games and MMOs. I think they'd like this.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's listing on AniList, but it was definitely popular, from all discussions, and it was popular in Japan too, from what I can tell, because of the amount of comments that would be on discussion sites about this. And I recently started following like a Japanese anime discussion podcast, and they mentioned it. They also had like a special specifically on this title alone. So clearly it's hit some sort of, mass appeal.
All right, to answer your question, Albert, although it wasn't a question, number 6 most popular Fall and 8th highest rated of Fall. Some other stuff too, but 8th
All right.
of Fall specifically. Anyway, yeah, like I actually kind of remembered watching it early off. I was really liking the story at the time because it was like totally dropping the identities of everyone to the viewers, and like no one really had a clear assertion of who was who yet, even though the viewers did. So I almost kind of wish that they did that turning point a little bit better when people started figuring out who they were. I was thinking there was going to be a bigger impact than there was. Like, I just kind of, like, I was like, man, if this is the resulting story, I kind of wish they kept that earlier part up just a little bit longer. I was kind of like a feeling. But I also remember something kind of funny about this one, because it was only 10 episodes long, but they had that other special that they just aired in the time slot where it would normally air next week. So it like totally dropped as episode 11 to a lot of people, not realizing it already ended. And they're like, what was with that episode 11? Like, how did that fit into everything?
Yeah, that was pretty interesting, because that episode came with the first volume of the Blu-rays that came out. So it was essentially like a bonus episode.
See, I thought it actually
And
aired.
it came out. Yeah, the turnaround time basically is super fast these days for getting Blu-rays out. And Japan being Japan, that sale still plays a significant part. By some accounts, you're basically in the red the entire time the show is airing, and you will not make money until you start selling Blu-rays, and only if you sell a significant amount of it. Okay, so this is a problem with the way the industry is. And yeah, so they're basically something like 80, no, not 80. They've only covered 80% of cost by the time the TV series stops airing. So you have to make up the rest in other merchandising, including Blu-rays.
That's just because they don't know the 5 simple steps.
And you need to add appealing things into the Blu-ray so other people will buy it. So that's why it's always like you have these limited edition with the art books, you have limited edition with extra episodes like this one did. It's a business model I don't agree with. I don't think it's sustainable, and it will be changing because of things like what's happening with Netflix, pouring money into anime. So I think because you can be profitable or at least break even because of the money Netflix will put into it. But anyway, yeah, the 11th episode is a bonus episode and does show a continuation developing. Now, as far as I know, the original source material, which is a light novel, is currently on hiatus. So I don't think there's plans right now for a second season of this to continue, with the relationship. And in some ways, because this is anime, I'm not really expecting a second season. So if you like your relationships to actually, have goal, some sort of ending in mind, might be a little frustrated with the lack because of their inexperience and bumbling around and this being anime. So, but with that, I highly recommend it to anyone that watches anime.
I was actually pretty disappointed by the show, and part of it is because of that subtitle, or that translation recovery of an MMO junkie versus recommendation of the wonderful virtual life, which imply totally different things about what the show is about. So when I first started watching this, I thought it would be something more like Real Life. And when why would she quit her job and then just become this so-called elite NEET, which is a great phrase. And I thought we were going to learn more about that, and apparently, no, we don't learn anything about that. And like the relationship drama is like so fluffy and driven by insane coincidences and sort of like out of character moments. That like for example, she follows what's his name home, Sakura, is that his name?
Sakurai, yeah.
Sakurai, and suddenly she's taking a shower at his place, and then she realizes, what am I doing? That it just seems so out of character, and I don't know. And I don't know. I wish there was more meat on those bones, so to speak. It just seems so threadbare, and so it spent so much time building up all this anticipation of like, when are they going to discover each other's identities, and when are they going to get together, and I wish there was more to it. Mm-hmm. And like, for example, not only did she quit her job, but Sakurai still works there. So that sets up this mystery of like, is it a black company, or did she face some sort of adversity there? Was she harassed?
Yeah, so
like
that's a common misunderstanding. She used to work for a company that she quit, and Koiwai, the other dude, right? Mm-hmm. Used to work for that same company in a different branch. She quit. Koiwai also quit and moved to a different company, and that's the company, kind of a actual nice company that, and the other guy Sakurai actually works for now. So he doesn't work for, is not related at all.
Oh God, that's confusing, because in the ending credits of the show, you see both office lady Morioka and office man, or salaryman Sakurai, working in the same place, which I took that to mean at one point they worked in the same office. They didn't even know.
No.
Okay, that was also really misleading.
Koei was like a former coworker who remembered. Like I actually kind of am a little bit foggy at this point on how Koei remembered, but it doesn't really matter. Like, oh yeah, I used to work with that person. Here's her picture of when I called her once on the phone that one time.
Yeah.
As far as like the MMO stuff goes, like all that was a positive to me. Like the depiction of the game itself, and like how people are separate from their characters, and the sort of opposite gender thing happening, like playing the other gender in the virtual world thing going on.
Yeah, that's
the funny thing about that is, so there's different voice actors for Mori's character and Sakurai's character, but for Koiwai's, it's the same one. Playing a chick.
Well, that's rather understandable.
Yeah, and I thought that was a nice little touch there. Just he was a hoot. He was so weird.
Yeah, I did look that up actually. I'm like, are these different voice actors, or are they like playing their opposite alter egos? Or, but yeah, I guess it shows how Koiwai is not really role playing in a sense. He's just sort of being himself and having this like ridiculous avatar.
Yeah, but I think the show is made because, I mean, the show really succeeds because Morioka's voice actress, Mamiko Noto, is also of that age. She's in her 30s, and she brings with her like a maturity, and Moriko's internal monologues when she becomes flustered is hilarious. and really well acted by the voice actress.
I really liked her as Benten in Uchoten Kazoku. Like, she has a very distinctive voice in that one.
Oh, okay. Nice. So next, any comments, or can we move on?
You know, just a small
next
comment, because I
Yep.
do like to talk about music. The funny thing is, I remember you, Albert, liking the opening, whereas I actually more digged. Didn't you like the opening song, or
Yes,
someone?
I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, you did, and it was like funny because like the ending sequence song is actually something that struck more to me. So it's just kind of I'm like, how do we
Ending
like?
too, but the OP is sung by so she's she's Ronka Lee, but you would not recognize her from just listening. Many people are like, wow, that's her. And there's a certain level of like maturity I think that she's achieved with the song, and I think her vocal qualities have actually gotten better.
Gotcha.
So it's a catchy tune, and I really like the song and the singer. So I think Nakajima Megumi did a great job with the song, and I hope she continues to sing and also act.
Yeah, I can't say that I made that link.
Okay, next up is Shoujo Shumatsu Ryoko. That's Girls Last Tour. So there's sometimes confusion because Shumatsu written here does mean the end, not weekend. So if you just read the Romaji, you're like, what? Girls Weekend Tour? But no, it actually means the end. So Girls Last Tour is a appropriate title. Just wanted to clear that up. Who else watched this besides me? Nick, you put it on your list too. So
Absolutely.
Oh, you've watched it. And Jessica, you've watched it too.
Yep.
So yeah, Nick, what did you think of it overall?
You know, I don't want to comment on the overall just right this moment. I'd rather say that at first I wasn't sure if I was going to be watching it. You know, I checked this thing. It's I don't know if Puni Plush is the word for the character design, or if we need to go beyond that or not. No clue at this point. But I was really taken in, I realized, by it's like I didn't mind the pacing. It's a very slow-paced, easygoing show, but the set pieces that it made for the backgrounds that it explored, multiple, like, changing multiple times through an episode sometimes, was just so captivating that along with the pace just kind of made for this really interesting show that kind of pulled you into this world. You kind of wondered about what civilization achieved to make the world into what it then looked like at that current time, because this is a little bit of post-apocalyptic kind of. I think like we find out that like throughout the whole series we bump into like, what's it, two, I think, other people. I think just two. And that's, for the distance that they're transversing, that's not a whole lot of people, and they're going right through big cities that you would expect to find people, but they didn't. So it was really just the surrealness of it, and just kind of like it left you food for thought. Like, I guess you don't have to sit there and think about it afterwards, but this is one of the series that I enjoyed thinking about the episode that I just watched, kind of waiting for the next week episode. And that was just my impression on it. Like, before I get into the whys, I just wanted to like kind of express that.
There's a lot to unpack in this show. A lot. And when I first started watching, I had sort of the same reaction as Nick, is that the character designs, they look like Dongo. And it didn't work for me at first, and I wasn't sure if I was going to keep on watching it, but then is it episode 3 where they have the rain song?
I forget the exact episode.
It hit home for me that this was an experience unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. Is that it was at the same time the most joyful thing, but also the most melancholy. And I think that's because there's a juxtaposition between what Chi and you are feeling versus what the viewer knows. And the reason Chi and you can be happy in this world is because they don't know what they have lost, but the viewer does. And that kind of messes with your viewer character empathy there. Is you're feeling something completely different from what the characters on screen are feeling. A few of the things they don't know about are cheese. They don't know what that tastes, what it is, where it comes from. General animals and plants, they have a very limited knowledge of. They don't really even know what God or religion is that all of these things were gone before they were even born. And so since they don't know that they're missing that, they're fine. But me on the couch, I'm crying. So I've never had a show make me feel the way that this one did.
It's just such a, it's just like, I kind of can't wait to put this one on my shelf just because the amount of like structures that they come across and just the world that gets painted by whoever came up with this thing. Because I could look up staff, but I don't do that. I like to have a raw impression of shows without really looking into the staff responsible. But I rely on other people for that.
Well, to give you an idea of that feeling is in that episode where they have the rain, is that it's pouring down rain, and so the girls take cover underneath a concrete bunker structure type thing. And you is enraptured by the sound that the rain makes on her helmet. So she gets all of these tin cans and places them around the shelter in a way that the rain will hit on them. And the girls are sitting there listening to the rain hitting on this. And they say, "This must be music," with the implication that they've never heard music before.
Right.
So it's... I never really thought that this show would do it. I really thought we were signing up for Moe girls exploring the post-apocalyptic wasteland.
The funniest thing about it is like half the audio of this thing is the freaking engine of that tank-like structure that they had as it like chugs along. That's like half the series right there. It's in there.
And it avoids the, meet interesting survivalist of the week by meeting someone, like Nick said, 2 people in the entirety of the series, but then they'll talk about them in other episodes. So they'll refer to the camera guy and the plane lady later on. So it makes them feel less like one-note characters and more like people that had an effect on Chi and Yu's experience.
Yeah, and it kind of almost made you wonder what they were going to get into next, because like sometimes they're exploring these crazy structures, sometimes they bump into someone, sometimes they bump into not people that they can talk to. That gets a little weird at that point. Not really, but kind of. Like, I'm just trying to like entice people here. But I think that's one of the main grit points here is, much like I kind of, not to compare this to, say it was just like that Inuyashiki show, but you had no clue what you would expect in the next episode. It just varied that much. It was that episodic. It didn't have a nice flow to, like, at one point they're in this snowscape and it's cold, and then in the next episode it might not be cold at all, and they it wouldn't be as like they'd have to bundle up in a makeshift shelter. You really didn't know what you were in for. The adventures were that far apart. So it's like, are they going to meet more people? You almost ask yourself so many questions about this series, wondering what was the extent of everything, these characters' knowledge, the world, like what is the state that everything is in? And I've never, I think, had an anime that just kind of invited me so much to just kind of wonder about the world that was complex yet minimalistic at the same time.
Because the structures that the girls are exploring there's almost the implication that it's one huge megalo structure, because they talk about getting up to the highest floor, and you can see them ascend, but then if you look in the very background, there will be an opening where the sky is coming through, even though what you think is the sky is already visible. It's really difficult to explain. So it's definitely worth checking out, and the backgrounds are still interesting even though they're monochromatic. I mean, it's almost all gray, the whole thing. But it was never boring, and I don't know how they pulled that off.
So I have a question. It seemed like quite often they had, in a few episodes, like at the very beginning, that there's a lot of more dilemmas that they had to go through. Like, she was cold, but the fire was going out. Should she burn this book or not? Or even in the first episode with the food, how they played that, like she had the gun and everything. And there's no way you're going to get this. This is mine. Do they still play that off throughout the whole thing, or does it change?
My particular interpretation is, well, whenever they're in search of like rations and whatnot, that's just a survival thing, right? They needed to eat. That was a tension point between the two, but what kind of kept the viewer on the edge of their seat was wondering if they were messing around or not. And the resolution of that eventually is revealed as to whether they were messing around or not. But I don't think that persists throughout the rest of the series. At some point that it kind of establishes what exactly they need to do in order to persevere in their journey. And like after you kind of get that idea of how they kind of scavenge, if you will, a lot of that dies down and it just kind of explores the world that they're in for the most part.
There's a later episode where it kind of goes that way with the fish, is that they go to a fish farm and there's only one fish left in the entire world, and you wants to eat that fish. But it's played more for laughs than as a serious moral dilemma.
Yeah, because it's so much funny because like you see her developing empathy at the same time moments later. It's an interesting series of how it develops. But like I don't see this type of show come like whereas Hoseki no Kuni made an interesting world, this world just kind of like invites you to just think about it. Like it doesn't really try to captivate the viewer with a lot of on-screen antics. It more just invites you to kind of almost meditate, except you're watching a show, so you're not meditating. But it was an interesting experience. I actually had a coworker who I talk about sci-fi stuff with all the time, and I once asked him what looks like a ferret and can eat like machine parts. Like what would that be? No, it's a fictitious animal. This is not a real one. Well, what would you think if you came across such? Like I just kind of had fun with it.
The only other question I had was, does it ever get into like how old they were? Because at the very beginning, it never really showed you like how old or their age. Like, were they around 14?
They're older than you think, but it's deceiving because of their appearance. But I think they're late teenage, aren't they? Or still like early teen, something.
Yeah, that's the impression that I got too. And their growth might be stunted because they're chibis, but also because of malnutrition too. That's why they look a lot smaller.
No, like I remember looking at the fish and not even being sure if it was like a real fish because of that design. But
yeah, the
I think
are the biggest hurdle in the show enjoyment.
Okay,
but I think why there's just one more moment, because I think that what you're able to build off of is once you watch it all the way through. I think that malnutrition issue would be constant to anyone left in the world. At one point, they're almost given the impression that they're probably the last two on the planet. Mm-hmm. Thus, you're kind of wondering about like what happened to the other two. Are they already gone? But it's those other two that kind of bring in a reference, because you had the one adventure photo guy and the one plane lady, as we're going to call them, I think what was their names? There was Kanazawa, which was the photo guy, I think.
Ishii.
And Ishii, or no, Ishii was the photo guy. Somebody.
No, Ishii is the woman.
Okay. Because of those designs, you kind of have enough reference to really, okay, like I can now see how mature looking this person is, so you can kind of have a little bit more of a basis of the character's age. And sometimes they do honestly do the bathing scene and whatnot, and some aspects of their attire also are indicators to potentially reveal age. So
they're probably middle teenagers. They're not specified, right?
Right.
So just wanted to give a couple other backgrounds. If my audio breaks up, let me know because I'm having some connection issues. But this, I started following this as a Pixiv manga. So the author Tsukumizu started publishing this kind of on the web, essentially on the website and also at Pixiv. And so I started following this. The story has concluded with 41, and the anime probably covered about less than half of that. So that's how I started. And, it is the character designs, if you look from the manga, this is from the official page, I believe. And, from the anime, they're pretty faithful, and it's just got this funny kind of odd looking, really just that's probably just the author's style, And it's been known that the author, when the publishing, was influenced by Blam. So Sean probably knows this. It's Tomo Nihei's Blam, which is set in essentially a gigantic Dyson sphere of level after level. And so that influence you can definitely see in the many layers of this super mega city that they're trying to navigate, scavenge, and just to live. And it's a faithful adaptation. And the interesting part is that they often muse philosophically about things that they observe, things that they don't know about, but observe things that happen to them. And I think it's aptly named, Girls Last Tour for a reason. So did enjoy it for those aspects because it's the characters that count, the character building moments and how they interact with each other. And Chi was played by Inori Minase. She's very popular right now, and the other and then the Yu was played by Yurika Kubo, who's also pretty famous. And if those two didn't mesh well and have good chemistry together, then I don't think this anime would have been successful. So kudos to them. They sang a lot of the songs, even the Rain song. I believe they sang the insert songs. So yeah, I thought they did a great job with just for the most part, it's just them, right? There's only like 2 other human characters. No, 3 with the grandfather, their uncle, I'm not sure which, and then the Nuko that shows up and the beings that they talk to at the end there. So, and yeah, so if chemistry and could talk about things and act, then the show would have been an utter failure. So I'm really happy that a show like this exists.
So were the beings and the Nuko in the manga too?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Once I don't really see a second season happening. I'm not sure about the popularity or how well sales did. And
I can't see it happening, but I'd want it to. Personally, I'd want it.
you could hopefully read the manga at some point, and it does. You're kind of dreading where the story goes because it is post-apocalyptic, right? And you're like, oh, what's going to happen? But included very well. Right, this is the
That's a
picture
real
of the
vehicle?
Kettering craft.
Yeah, it's a real vehicle. I talked to a guy
It's a real
about
vehicle.
it because I
I had
wanted to
no
make sure.
idea.
Yeah. The Katen
This
Kraten
is
or something.
it's from the wiki, and this is in Russia during the Second World War.
Oh,
So it is an actual vehicle. So just wanted to share that. I think that's it. That's
Yeah,
So the
just
opening,
be the voice actors for this series
was
in
signed
the
by both of
studio
them.
doing the recording.
It's pretty intense. All right, stop. Okay, I think we've got time for one more title, which is, and this one is Itsudatte Bokura no Koi wa
Skip the
Tensen.
next two.
Skip it?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, because if we're not going to do another one, or if we're going to do another one, I'm not sure. We don't have that many titles left, and I'd want to get to this one more
Okay.
so than that one.
Hold on a second. Let me.
Because it was technically higher on my list, even though I reversed my numbers.
Was it the Yusha no Sho?
Yeah, well, you could start with either. It really doesn't matter. Because I'm going to go over them both.
Okay. Yeah. So this is Yuki no Yusha de Aru.
Okay,
Two different series, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you
Two
can
different
talk
series.
about whichever one.
It'll probably be released on the same disc, though, because they were or maybe two split mini discs. But so who here, show of hands, not really, but remembers Yuki Yuna, the show that we all know and know.
I remember it being talked about here. I haven't actually seen it, but is it one of those magical girl shows that has like a twist at the end?
It is, and the twist was not well received amongst our community, from what I remember.
Do you think it was a bad twist, or what?
Well, that's what I'm kind of here to talk a little bit about. So,
and is this a direct sequel to that?
Oh well, half of it is. The first 6 episodes, which were like the Sumi chapter, the Washio chapter or whatever, were a prequel to the Yuki Yuna series. So you have 6 episodes that occurred before the season 1 that we saw, and then when those 6 episodes are done, then we get a sequel. So it wrapped around the first season.
This seems kind of messy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bad part about it is, much in my opinion, whenever you sit down and put a show in chronological order instead of jumping around everywhere explaining the story, it tends to make for a better show. And I think that if we had the prequel in place before, while we still might not appreciate the gimmicks that were employed in the season 1, which, if you guys don't recall, that was when they would enter Monkai, their powered up form, and to beat the Vertex, which were the Evangelion-esque angels coming to touch Adam and blow the planet up. For the Evangelion fans, they would enter that Monkai form, get a bunch of power, but at the cost of, when they return to reality, they would be afflicted by a disability of some sort that was a plot point. It was questionable if the disability was permanent or not. And for a while, it seemed that it was causing strife amongst the cast because they were thinking they were being lied to and it wasn't permanent. And every time they asked into it, they just kept, no, it'll go away eventually. Just give it time. It seems odd. It's a very surreal thing. I think there could have been so much better done, but having seen the prequel and sequel, I could say that is regretfully a kind of important mechanic, because in the prequel, now this is going to be a little bit spoiler heavy, I'm not going to say the whole story, we followed a cast of 3 characters, one of which was one of the protagonists of the season 1 that we watched. We had, let me get names here, just because I don't want to go in nameless, unfortunately. Because I know Washiosumi, there was Gin, somebody or another, and then we have what's Nogi Sonoka, or Sonoko, yes. So we find out that those cast were originally 3 who were chosen to go to this. I forget what the world's called, but it's not important. They would, when a being would randomly invade the world, they'd have to defend their god by transforming and trying to take the being out before it touched the god. And along the way, it would corrupt the scape that it would walk upon. And if it sat in an area for too long, it would be directly correlated to a incident where that section of the dream-esque world, or the other S dimension, like, pertain to on their actual map. So like the more an enemy hung in an area, the worse an accident was going to occur in that general area when they finally beat the Mr. Big Bad Guy, unless it won, and then their world's destroyed. But so originally we have a cast of that Nogi Sonoka, Washiosumi, I believe, and Gin, I forget her last name. Those 3 had to defend the city, and at the time, they literally, most of the prequel was some kind of training, because they didn't have the spirit beings that would keep them safe in the spirit realm. They only had their weapons that they had to practice and become proficient with. And one of the intricate points here was, while the 3 of them had to defend the world, and they were fighting enemies, and the weird thing here was, I remember, now I need to bounce off some of you guys who have seen it just a little bit. Wasn't a big part of the combat of fighting the Vertex that they had to beat it down to some point, and then they had to break a core? Or did that, like, track down the core and beat it aspect only come later in the series? Do you recall?
They didn't have to beat it down. They had to lock it up, and then they made some kind of circle around it that exposed the core.
Right, but that was like for every single enemy, not just the beginning ones or whatever? Or later ones, I mean?
It was every single enemy that had to destroy the core.
Yeah, like, that mechanic was not present in the prequel, which was kind of weirded me out, and it seems like the only point that kind of breaks the tie-in. But the whole gimmick was supposed to be that they didn't have Monkai form in the prequel, which, if we started there, would have made, I think, for a better story, because one time they're fighting the Vertex, and 3 of them are coming through. Now, 1 is usually a pain in the butt, and a cast of 4 have a tough time dealing with 1 sometimes. When you have a front of multiple Vertex, it becomes that much more difficult. Amongst one of the battles, this is the spoiler-heavy part, I believe one of the other 2 that wasn't Gin, who is not present later in the series, even though the other 2 are, takes a hit and becomes, they didn't have protective shields or anything, they were just hit, and the other one was trying to cover for her, as the other one had a reason, like a family responsibility reason, that she had to keep the town safe. She didn't want, the world to end. So she chases after the 3 Vertex on her own and actually subdues all 3 of them. Mind you, the core combat was largely gone from the series for whatever reason. However, in the process of taking down the 3 Vertex, she actually succumbs to her own injuries in this flip world and actually becomes a hero who dies due to this combat. It was after that the organization, that like religious sector that they had, that acted as an intermediary of like God's will or whatever, said, these heroes are kind of rare, and although we didn't want to implement this system, since we lost one, we're going to have to. And that's when the spirits and that whole Monkai form got introduced, to which, at the end of the prequel, because this is still in the prequel, so the 2 characters now are fighting with the ability to go into that Monkai state. One character utilizes it 3 times in a particular combat, and that was our somewhat main protagonist, Washiosumi or whatever. I know her name's in the title, but oh well. And we kind of actually know what's going to happen because we saw the prequel first. She gets a disability in either leg, and actually her memory, one of them affected her head, giving her that temporary sense of amnesia, which made her, they renamed her in the different series when she went to a different adoptive family, into kind of another character who had a lot of differences from the other 3 characters that got introduced into that first initial prequel. But the way that it spun drama was, not as intense as the first season because they didn't have that whole disability thing going till the very end. And I kind of wondered, okay, well, like, what was the point of all of that? Like, it was an interesting arc because we got to see a lot more, I guess, fleshed out characters come out from the series, but like now we have the sequel. So now the events all happen and it all makes a little bit more sense because like the one person that they talked to, if you remember in the first season, they talked to the one disabled chick. That was, I forgot to mention this moments ago, but while Washio Sumiya did that 3 times to get those specific 3 disabilities, the other person ended up having to do Monkai form a lot more, and she was the disabled person that they met in that one episode where they talked to like a previous Shrine Maiden thing or whatever they're called. I know my explanation's horrible, but the sequel is really, really heavy. There's a lot that happens in it. For a moment, if you guys recall, while under the guise of that amnesia, the Washio Sumi character decides to open a hole in the barrier that led to the outside world that she learned of. Like, do you recall this?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have the fallout of that event. Because she thought she was doing what was right at the time, according to, whatever logic she had, it made no dang sense to us at the time, and it still kind of doesn't. I mean, but the character had, they had a lot going on. It seems that hole in the barrier is causing problems, but we do have a way to seal it. Normally, there's a non-combat, like, divinely blessed person that can seal such a hole, but incidentally, the Washio Sumi character is also potentially one of those herself. So she takes it upon herself to try to patch the thing that she caused when she comes more properly to her senses, if you will. But in the process of that, she's literally kind of erased from photographs, from people's memories, and she's almost like this vague existence that almost didn't exist. When our main cast of characters finally go, hey, we have a missing person here, and they slowly get some of their memories back, they decide we have to go save her. In the process of going to save her, more trippy stuff happens, believe it or not. But this is where like the series gets really heavy, and if it weren't for like the mechanics of season 1, it makes for an interesting tale. It's a bit convoluted, and I'm not going to give away the ending, but I will say that in order to save the one character who was almost wiped from existence as kind of a self-appointed sacrifice, they reveal a lot more about the lore of how Vertex interact with the one godlike being. And unfortunately, our main protagonist, Yuki Yuna, receives a curse for whatever reason, for saving her friend. That like the whole physics and fixing thing involved in that. Agitated, I think. It was even trippy for me to kind of wrap my head around. A curse that caused her to not an eye patch. That was the disabilities. To cause her to almost become terminally ill, like in a sense. She wasn't really dying of any perceivable circumstance, but the curse was a nasty one, and whenever she tried to tell her friends what happened to her, it would almost cause a Vertex-like incident on her friends, marking a tragedy to soon befall them. Left not being able to tell her friends as she slowly succumbed to this curse, stealing her very life force away, it was a very tragic, like, chunk of episodes. It was interesting the tale they were able to weave, and I'm not sure how much more I want to reveal, or just say that if the story was chronologicalized, I think, we'd have less issues with it. But just to see the tragedy that it depicts, I remember like Madoka being really known for that. Madoka Magica, as you recall, the deconstruction of Magic Girl anime that wasn't the healing show that was what everyone intended for. This one spun a lot more heavy of a narrative with the circumstances that it had in play, and I'm not going to say it was like it was almost like a further deconstruction, because it had a lot more where Magica was kind of always this convoluted series of, you know, granting wishes for whatever. Yuki Yuna was a deconstruction in a different way, especially in the later half. Oh man.
So basically, we should just watch it so we can understand what you're going
If you
through.
wanted to make sense of anything what I said, I know it's going to be confusing. You can, sure. But I just wanted to say, like, I think if anyone were to want to watch this thing from the get-go, you do it in order. I don't like that they did it out of order, because it just throws that many more people off that kind of, you know, vehicle, but I remember like people at the time saying it like made no dang sense that it was trying to tell the story that it told, and that's particularly because it started in the middle. So I was kind of wondering what this second season was going to achieve when I first started watching it, and little did I know that it was half a prequel, half a sequel. And once the story is told chronologically, it's a much better tale than just kind of starting in the middle, then explaining characters that you could have explained from the get-go to lead to an actual interesting ending, while still further wallowing in an interesting scenario. So it's kind of hard to call the series worth it, but I think the prequel and the sequel do it a lot more justice than it sounds like any kind of a season 2 would have saved the show. Not that it needed saving, but like if they just started and told the story in order, I think it would have made a lot more sense. And even if it didn't achieve, like, I haven't told you the actual ending because I don't want to be that much of a spoiler, but I did want to explain some of the mechanics and actually the reason why certain stuff happened. Like the whole, in the end, there's a lot of opposition. You get into, I'm not much of a, I don't have a lot of background in, I guess, Shinto-esque lore, where it comes down to, you know, these abstract gods, which I think in Yuki Yuna there's only one central one, but how the counterforce to that that's trying to end the world interacts with these aspects of divinity that are a little bit beyond me. But it was definitely, and like if you just kind of skip the prequel and go right into the sequel, at least you'll have an explained series. Like that was the whole point of Yuki, and I do believe that the sequel wasn't supposed to end, or the initial season 1. A lot of times we watch a season and it's like you watch it and it's a story. It's, you know, like Girls Last Tour, although there is more, it told a complete story. The recovery of the MMO junkie, it told a complete story, and we don't really need more. But Yuki Yuna is a series where it really needed to tell its sequel story if given the chance to properly. Is it worth it? That's kind of up to the viewer to decide, but it wasn't the series that lacked as much substance as I originally thought. That was my impression of it.
All right, thanks, Nick.
I know that was a mess.
We are past the 2-hour point, so we will wrap this up. Again, OreAni, we hang out at the Anime Talk group. So come join, and it is a discussion heavy. Please don't post memes and GIFs and all kinds of junk. It will be removed. So talk with us about various anime topics, plus community. Otherwise, we will try to have another hangout next week or the week after to start discussing the 18 spring pre stuff. So I think most episodes at least have 2 currently, so we should be able to discuss things.
There's one that even has 10.
That is true. That is true, and it is a discussion topic, I would say. So, anything else by anyone? Right. Well, and have a great year. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye bye.
See ya.